Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back of the Grid. I'm your host this week, Chris, and I'm joined by Stu.
Hello.
And Tom's poorly this week, unfortunately. He's got a broken voice, which is not good for podcasting.
No use for recording podcasts.
It is not. So just the two of us this week to talk about the Miami Grand Prix, and we've not really spoke about it at all since. So I'm really interested to see what you made of that as a race, as an event.
Yeah. Oh wow. I mean, let's say
as a race.
Two questions.
Let's say as a race to start with.
Two questions there. And as an event, I have one opinion, and as a race, as a race, it wasn't half bad. I thought it was all right race. It was pretty good. I thought it was nice and finely. To be fair, I thought the Azerbaijan Grand Prix wasn't that terrible. I know not a lot happened, but I did find it quite poised for a lot of it. The poise never actually turned into anything. Whereas I think the difference with this race is probably the poise did amount to an overtake for the lead, which is not something you get every day in Formula One.
No, it's not. I feel like I maybe liked Baku a bit more than the average person, and I feel like I liked this one a bit less than the average person. There were 60 overtakes, which is the most of any race this season by a long way. I think Bahrain had 37. That's the next. I don't know. There was a lot going on, but a lot of it kind of felt a little bit inconsequential almost, or it was more just kind of you were watching people shuffle back into the order you expected them to be in, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly harsh. Something didn't quite click with this race for me.
I can see that, and I feel like we didn't see of all the action that was going 60. I wouldn't have believed that there was 60 overtakes in that race. From that's
to be fair, half of them were probably Leclerc and Magnussen just going backwards and forwards.
I mean, that I would have loved to have seen. I'd have been on board for watching that. That would have been entertaining. But I feel like a lot of the coverage was kind of pinned on the two Red Bulls, because obviously the narrative of the race was, will he catch him? Won't he catch him? When he does catch him, will he be able to overtake him? So the whole thing was kind of building up to that. And we didn't really get an awful lot of everything else. And I guess as well, when there's a story like that unfolding in a race anyway, and it is poised for that big event leading up towards the end, then you do tend to, even as an audience member, you do tend to kind of concentrate on that, because that's what your focus is being taken up by. So, it's nice to see that there was all those overtakes. I should really check out some of the highlights and watch those actual overtakes as they happen, because I haven't seen many of them.
Before we get into the race itself, we've sort of touched on it already, but the event, everything around it, all of the intro gubbins. I mean, lots of the drivers have already said it just felt completely unnecessary. I think it was George Russell said it was just an unwanted distraction. Yeah,
none of them seemed particularly happy to be doing it.
No.
I think that was probably part of the problem. I think it seems to me, especially with reports coming out that, this week they're now saying that the FIA are going to consult with drivers for future pre-race events. It's well, clearly they didn't consult them on this one then, did they? Yeah. And that would be why they probably all looked a little bit unhappy with what was happening. Because as I understand it, they were all told that they had to be in the pit lane half an hour before they usually would, which means that they're stood in the sun in their race gear. That's not a cool situation to be in when you're literally you're basically covered in cotton the entire time in the blazing hot sun of Miami. So that can't have been comfortable. Obviously, a lot of them are walking around wearing their ice pack waistcoat kind of things. I thought it felt a little bit forced, would be if I were to sum it up in a sentence.
It did, and it just feels like they're putting all of this time and effort and money into hyping the event again. But if you hype things up and then the event doesn't deliver, people aren't going to come back next time just for the hype. And again, it comes back to what we were talking to Elizabeth about a few weeks ago, where it's their approach to America, particularly at the moment, just seems to be very short-sighted. Like, they're not really thinking about the longevity of people wanting to come back there. Like, they still had... This definitely wasn't a sellout. As much as they liked to trumpet the number of people there, it wasn't a sellout.
Really?
No.
The way, like... Because I think they even announced, like, the number... Because they announced that they'd sold more... They'd made more tickets available this year by, like, something like 8,000, I think, per day, more tickets. So, in the end, I think, like, they said that 230,000 people attended over the weekend, but...
I suspect the tickets that didn't sell were probably all of the VIP ones, because obviously this event leans very heavy on the VIP package. Like, did you see that photo of a menu that was knocking around on the internet?
No, what was that?
In one of the VIP hospitality things, it was like the food menu in there, and it was something ludicrous like nachos for 4 people was like $250. Like, it was just mind-blowingly stupid prices. It's like, people aren't going to come back to do that.
Why?
It's very odd.
Like, what? Like, why? I don't... What?
Again,
why that expensive for nachos? That's really strange.
Because they can. Because they think people will pay it. And it's their aim, and it's at the same people who, you know, buy a box at an NFL game or buy front row seats at an NBA game. Like, that's the kind of people they're trying to get there. And as whether that will work, time will tell, I suppose. But yeah, it's just very strange. A very strange event once again.
Oh, here we go. What else is on this menu?
Oh, there we go. There's a picture of the menu.
Let's bring it over here so I can see it.
What else have we got?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Watermelon and tomato salad, $250.
Does serve 4 people though, so you know.
Oh my goodness! This is insane.
Yeah.
Main lobster rolls, $450 with lemon aioli, truffle, brioche, and fizzled potatoes. What do they fizzle them in? Like
gold, I would hope, for $450.
U5 chilled prawn, $500, and that just has mustard sauce and cocktail sauce.
Oh, you get 2 sauces for your $500. That's nice.
That is wild. That's
madness. It's absolute madness.
Absolutely wild. Like, who in their right mind? Maybe, like, I've been watching Succession lately. This feels like the Succession menu. This is not like, even if you're a VIP going to Formula One, you see like fairly normal people with VIP tickets, right? Like, we've been to VIP at Silverstone, and unless you've got like the absolute, you know, the special golden ticket that you can get, the VIP tickets are not like, yeah, they give you access to like some nice places and stuff, but there are relatively normal people with VIP tickets who ain't paying that.
These are the sort of tickets that you don't go and buy. They're the sort of tickets that are offered to you. Like, these ones aren't advertised anywhere. You have to know people who know people.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe they've got to pay for these tickets somehow.
Yeah, maybe.
That's how. Wow. I mean, that's literally more than like a punter ticket for general admission for Silverstone.
I think when we went to Budapest, we had a whole weekend in Budapest and saw a race for less than some of the things on that food menu.
Including the flights. Like,
yeah.
Absolutely crazy. Wow, we've dragged this one out way too far. Let's keep going.
We have. And just imagine what Vegas is going to be like. Like, this is Miami, which is like ridiculous in itself. Vegas is going to be something else.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we talk about some race cars?
We can, but I just want to say that is kind of gross, that menu.
It's horrible, yeah. It's bizarre.
That's not the world I want to live in.
Right, let's talk about some race cars. This was probably the best opportunity Perez could have asked for to take the lead of the championship after Charles Leclerc once again ruined qualifying for Max Verstappen. Yeah. I love Leclerc's strategy of out-qualifying Verstappen by crashing. That's worked for him on many occasions over the last couple of years.
It's an interesting strategy, Buzz. Let's see if it plays out.
It didn't play out well for Leclerc, but we'll get to that. Verstappen started down in 9th, but in the end, he just looked unbeatable. I think in a lot of ways he won that race in the opening stint. Perez was on the mediums and didn't really manage to pull a massive gap, whereas Verstappen just scythed through the field starting on hards. He took second place on lap 15 and he was only 3.7 behind. Like to be overtaking people on the harder tyre and to only have that gap is unbelievable. Like the decision to start on hards ultimately was what won in that race, I think. And just how well he treated them.
Yeah, I think so. But also like the other factor that sort of plays into this is no one really quite knew how long the medium was going to last. So
there were not many long runs done at all in practice.
Hardly any long runs in practice. So bear that in mind, because obviously Perez starting on the medium tyre then gives Red Bull all the information about how long the medium tyre is going to last. So Verstappen had the inherent advantage of knowing how hard he was going to be able to push the medium tyre from the get-go, whereas Perez, there's a lot of talk, people saying, gone straight back down this like dark alley of Perez can't hold a candle to Verstappen. When I think there's nuance to this. I don't think it's as simple as Verstappen was just so much quicker than Perez. I think there's definitely an element of strategy and data gathering that was happening during the race that information was being obviously fed back to the team, and they were using that to get their car to the front. And there's, I have no problem with Verstappen winning, and no problem with the way he did it, and no problem with how that played out, because that's just racing sometimes. Sometimes you don't have all the information and you end up volunteering, whether you mean to or not, you end up volunteering information to other competitors, and it just so happens that his biggest competitor is in the same team as him, gets even more information, knows exactly how hard he can push the tyre, and therefore, huge advantage for Verstappen, I think, at that point, way more than what's been played up. So, I don't think it's like quite as cut and dry for the championship as what a few people seem to think it is. And
also, Perez kind of had no choice but to start on the mediums as well, especially with Alonso on the front row. The last thing Perez needed was getting jumped by Alonso at the start. He had to start on the faster tyre.
Exactly. You don't. If he gets bogged down by Alonso, then he's already lost the race.
Yeah, it's done.
I mean, all you have to do to know that is look at the way Verstappen was able to catch up, and side through the field the way he did. So, I think probably in hindsight, and I think you could see at the end of the race that Perez was kind of kicking himself for not pushing a lot harder on those tyres at the start of the race.
The trouble was the track evolution was crazy as well. Like they'd had rain overnight that had washed away most of the rubber. You've got no support series running there. So Perez is trying to get a softer tyre working while the track is essentially still rubbering in. Whereas when Verstappen's on the medium tyre, he's got a race, or 2/3 of a race distance's worth of rubber down.
Yeah, it's a huge strategy fluff from the Perez side of the garage, but unfortunately, at the time that they created the strategy, it was the best strategy for him to win the race.
Yeah,
it just so happened that the information wasn't there to tell them that it was the wrong strategy until after the race.
Yeah, kind of a rock and hard place situation, really. Obviously, in a way, it's a blow to Perez. Like, it would have been great for him to get a win and take the championship lead, put the authority down. That being said, the gap's still only 14 points. I don't think a lot of people would have expected Perez to be that close after this many races. So he's still very much in there.
I think he's absolutely in the mix. This can still go. We're not even we're just a quarter of the way through the season, aren't we?
Wow!
This is not a clear cut Verstappen World Championship just yet. With only 14 points between them, it could go any which way. Still, I think it'd be foolish to write off Perez this early.
We'll move on to Aston Martin. I think mixed fortunes, it's fair to say. That I think they tried to be a bit too clever in Q1 and get through on one set of tyres and just kind of misread the way the track was going to evolve. Alonso scraped through, Stroll didn't. He was out in Q1. Almost looked like a smidge of overconfidence. They've had a few good races, and now they're like, yeah, we'll get through one set of tyres. It's fine. We're second fastest team. It kind of bit them a little bit there. Not a particularly good fight back though from Stroll. He only managed to finish 12th in the end. He was in a lot of interesting fights, but he didn't really make the progress you'd expect from that car, particularly when overtaking was as possible as it turned out to be there.
Yeah, I think a lot of it again is like down to some of it's time management and some of it's just the grip level on this circuit did kind of like separate the men from the boys a little bit, I would say. Like the guys who can handle the more difficult conditions definitely were the drivers that really sort of, you know, they're the ones that recovered the best, I think, and from their, you know, out of grid positions, and they're the ones who were able to get the lap time even in conditions that weren't optimum for Formula One cars, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to remember what strategy Stroll did tyre-wise. Where's he gone? Okay, yeah, so he started on hards as well, so he did the same as Verstappen and Hamilton. Obviously worked out a lot better for them than it did for him. Alonso, as I said, started in the front row, finished third again. That's 4 podiums in 5 races for Alonso, which I read earlier is more than his last 7 seasons of F1 combined. Jeez. Such an Alonso career stat.
Yeah, that's a big time Alonso career stat. I like that stat though. I think it just shows you the, you know, the success that Aston Martin are having this season. I think it's a really fun story that's unfolding.
Yeah.
As we sort of start to get into like the meat of the season, and I'm really interested to see whether it or not it can keep going. I'd love to see them, you know, keep developing the car, keep improving, and maybe even, you know, steal wins.
I think they'll
podiums
nick at
from the
least
Red
one
Bulls.
win, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think definitely still the second fastest team. Baku, I think, a bit of an anomaly for them. They were only third fastest in Baku. Yeah, happy times for them.
Yeah, very good.
Mercedes had a weird weekend. Their pace like yo-yoed all over the place.
It came and went, didn't it? Yeah.
It really did. And then kind of split between the two cars almost in qualifying. Russell ended up 6th on the grid while Hamilton was out in Q2. Then it came back to them in the race. They both had pretty damn good races, lots of like interesting racing, some really good overtakes from them both. Hamilton's second half of the race in particular, he just kind of came alive and scythed through. He ended up 6th with Russell 4th ahead of Sainz, which I think is Russell's best result of the season. Must be.
That he was on the same strategy as Verstappen.
Yeah.
Hamilton was. He started on the hard and moved on to the medium. And yeah, it just shows you what a powerful strategy that turned out to be. I think to start on from 13th in a Mercedes, which we all know is, well, I mean, when you look at the times from qualifying from practice, maybe not FP1, but the resulting practice sessions after that, it was clear that they had a real struggle on their hands with that car this weekend. So for it to come back to them the way it did, I think was surprising for everyone. Because you know, after quali, it looked like, you know, they can't wait. I mean, obviously they can't wait to get this upgrade that they've got coming in the next race onto the car, and they've done well, to be fair, to still be in to be getting the results that they've had with what they've got. I think they have done well, but now, I mean, really, everything that's happened up to this point, including this race, yes, it was a successful race for them in the end, but they probably should have been a little bit further up the order, and I think they'll be just forgetting all these races, get all the focus onto these upgrades, and hoping that they get what they're expecting out of them, because if they don't, they're going to be in real trouble if they don't.
They really are. Likewise with Ferrari. I mean, Mercedes started the season not seeming to understand the car, and it feels like they've kind of gradually zeroed in on it. Ferrari seem as far away as they've ever been from understanding this car. Like, both the drivers this weekend have kind of, the mask has slipped a little bit. The Ferrari, everything is fine with Ferrari mask has slipped a little bit, and both drivers have said the car's completely unpredictable on the limits. They both sound just completely lost with it.
I think this is like the advantage Red Bull have got, is they've got such a drivable car. It seems as sort of time has worn on, and like more research has been done and more reporting gets done on that car, the Red Bull seems to have a really, really, really nice suspension platform. And I've said on here for a long time now that a lot of Mercedes' problems were around suspension. I was saying this when they were porpoising, when that first started happening. I was like, this is not an aero. Well, obviously the aero is related heavily, but Mercedes seem to have Red Bull seem to have suspension that can handle all of those issues, and no one else really seems to have set out on the path of having that right from the get-go in the same way Red Bull did. So,
and they always have, like, it's obviously a massive oversimplification, but Red Bull always seem to be very good at just having a solid, drivable base to work from. It's almost
they just
like...
seem to understand better than other teams that in order to get, for the driver to get the maximum out of the car, they need to be as comfortable as possible and able to predict exactly what that car is going to do every corner in every condition. And yeah, you know, it's difficult to get that right on every corner, every single condition, but the operating window of the Red Bull is just so much wider than any other car seems to have, that yeah, they're able to extract the absolute maximum out of it a lot easier than I think Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston less so. I feel like Aston seem to have a comfortable car to drive as well, but probably Red Bull and Aston seem to be the only two that have got a platform that's working really, really well for their drivers.
I think it's very telling that Baku is a very extreme, outliery kind of circuit, and that's the one where Aston have struggled the most, and it's the one where Ferrari were the fastest. Like the Ferrari was so quick around there, but that's no good if you're all over the shop everywhere else. Like Leclerc's crashes over this weekend, like I don't even saw the onboards, but it just went. Like he was being, you know, greedy with the curbs and he was pushing it on the edge, but clearly, like, it just looks like a car that every time you push it to the edge, it's like, is this going to go on me or not?
It bites you, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Okay, yeah, I agree with you. I think Leclerc actually showed in, I think it was quali or practice, I can't remember which one it was. It was the first incident he had with the barrier where he took the nose off of it. I think it might have been practice.
Practice
FP3.
3, I think that was.
So he was really smart because the commentator they had that day on the platform I was watching on,
James Hinchcliffe,
seemed to think that he didn't seem to understand why he'd gone straight into the barriers rather than try to rescue it. But I think what Leclerc did was really smart. So instead of trying to rescue it and risking wiping off the whole right-hand side of the car across the barriers, instead he just braked as hard as he can to get it slowed down as much as he could in a straight line and ended up only taking the nose off.
Yeah.
Which meant that after that, there's a lot less of a recovery job to do by the mechanics on that car to get it back on track, it ready for qualifying.
Yeah.
Imagine if he'd taken, you know, both his right-hand wheels off, then
Could
and
be
all the
missing
suspension
qualifying.
off of it. You're missing qualifying probably at that point, especially after FP3. You've got 2 hours-ish to get most races, to get that whole side rebuilt. And goodness knows what else that's going to do to your gearbox, your engine, your aero, your cooling, bodywork, all that sort of stuff, your floor. So I think he did make the right decision in that moment in practice to go in a straight line and to only hit the nose. But I think during qualifying, it's a different story, and you're pushing a lot harder, and the risk is obviously worth taking because you've got all night for them to repair the car.
Yeah.
As much as you don't want them to have to repair the car, you've got all night for them to do it and get it all fixed. So
because he did try to save it in qualifying and he ended up going backwards in and was probably quite lucky not to do the drive shaft and the gearbox and all of that business.
Yeah, that's how bad it could have gone. Mm-hmm. And if he had done that in practice 3, then he wouldn't be qualifying.
Yeah, exactly.
Know? So yeah, so in a way, he's crashing smart at certain times.
However,
but
probably
times,
would be better if he wasn't crashing in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, a real low for Ferrari there. Things are not good there. Things don't sound good at Alpine either. I mean, they put a decent enough weekend together. They got a double points finish, 8th and 9th, which equals their best result of the season. But it only moves them equal with McLaren on points. They're still a long way from where they were last season when they finished 4th. But the rumblings coming from within that team, like the boss has been piping up a bit. It sounds like a change might be imminent. What that change will look like, it's hard to tell. But
yeah, I mean, I really like Otmar. I think he's a really
I do as well.
cool guy. I did not understand why he ended up leaving Aston Martin. I think a lot of the performance that you see at Aston Martin now is kind of to do with Otmar, because he only left towards the end of last season, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
2 seasons now.
No, it was end of last year. I think he left. Yeah.
Anyone in the Discord got an answer for us on that one? Nope.
Either way,
like I think he always seemed like a really, really capable. He does still seem like a very capable team principal, and he seems like the right guy for that kind of job. So it is strange what's happening at Alpine for a team that seemed to have, towards the end of last season, be in a real resurgence and to be sort of, doing really, really well. And there was a lot of talk at the start of the season about them potentially having a car that could be doing what Aston's doing. And it's just, I think, given that they were hyped up so much, Otmar was at Alpine last year. Given that they were so hyped up at the start of the season, to them be performing this badly and to have had some of the issues they've had, like finger trouble in the car just spontaneously combusting in Baku, before or during qualifying. I've slept since then. It's things are not looking great at Alpine. It's a hard. They're going through a very, very difficult period. Hopefully, once they don't even seem to be extracting any performance from their cars at all. Like it could be that the package is there, they're just not getting anything out of it, which is why I guess people would be saying, well, it's amateur hour, this, that, the other. They need to do better.
And that's why. So Laurent Rossi, the head of Alpine, has been saying it's not good enough. Things have changed. There's going to be consequences if they don't live up to it. It just seems a bit premature, a bit short-sighted. I think they need a bit of time to. I mean, I've not really put a clean weekend together until this weekend. As you say, they've had little issues here and there. I don't think it's time to start swinging the axe just yet at that team.
I think this early in the season, again, we're what, a quarter of the way into?
Not even. Less
than a quarter of the way. I think sometime in the next race, we will be a quarter of the way through the season. I'm sure David Croft will tell you the exact lap.
Yes, I'm sure he will.
That's one thing he loves to do.
He loves that.
I think there's time for them to recover. I think there's time for them to just get themselves in gear and put together a clean weekend. And maybe once they do, we might see the true Alpine. Maybe we haven't seen the true Alpine yet. Maybe
I'm not sure we have, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe there's more to come.
Speaking of teams that are struggling and need to make some moves, McLaren, man. So
this was weird, man. They were looking so promising.
Because they made a step forward in Baku, and they said the upgrades they brought to Baku had brought a little bit of performance, but they should bring even more once we get to Miami. And they were nowhere. They were out in Q1 by some margin. I think that it was only Logan Sargent behind them, I think, in Q1. It was miserable. I mean, they didn't really get a chance to do much in the race about it. Norris got hit by De Vries at the start. I reckon that was costing him 2 or 3 tenths a lap. And then Piastri had a brake-by-wire issue that started from lap 6 and just struggled with that the whole race.
Yeah, I mean, clearly they do obviously need more upgrades, but I think with this team, and this circuit, and I think with all the teams at this circuit has been a weird situation this weekend. This is not a normal. This certainly wasn't a normal race weekend in terms of sort of the way the cars were running, the way the grip level was. All these things. New surface always is difficult for the cars anyway, because all the oil comes up from the tarmac and makes it the surface almost more slick. And then as the surface ages, it gets higher grip and gets better. up to a point, and then obviously it reaches a limit of age, and then it just starts to fall apart, and you need to resurface it. In summary, so no one was really expecting this to happen. No one's really quite expecting that the grip level to be as bad as it was. And I think McLaren are one of those teams that got caught out maybe a bit worse than some of the others, partly as a result of having a bad qualifying, but also, just not being able to, when they're still getting used to this big upgrade package that they brought to the car last race. I think for this to happen at this circuit with this grip level isn't a massive surprise, because they're still kind of almost getting to know their B-spec car. And you can see, if you're going to give them an excuse, you can see why it would be difficult to get your car set up for such a low grip level when you've been expecting much better performance from it. So I think reserve judgment on McLaren. I think Imola next race is a much better circuit for them, and obviously a more traditional racing circuit. So it could be that they get there and suddenly we see another swing back to the positive side of performance for them.
Also the only team to run the soft tyre in the race. Both of them started on the soft. So I can only imagine they were hoping for an early safety car and then switch to the hards and run them until the end. It's the only thing I can think of that were trying.
Yeah, maybe get
because they did.
Off the line.
Norris came in on lap 4, Piastri on lap 5, and then they both did run hards to the end from there. But that was more because their hand was forced and there being a convenient safety car for them.
Yeah.
Shall we do drivers of the day?
Are we doing Haas, or are you not going to bother with them?
Oh yeah, sorry, I skipped over Haas. How could I? So easily done normally, but actually, they were really good this weekend. Fourth place on the grid for Magnussen. I mean, obviously we know there was a red flag towards the end, so a lot of drivers didn't get their final laps in. But even so, that was some properly quick laps they put in.
Yeah. They handled the situation very well. I think this is one of the teams that handled the low grip situation and were able to get their car into a place where, react quickly to it and get their car into a situation where they could maximise the conditions.
Yeah, totally. They didn't have the race pace necessarily. Magnussen did give Leclerc an extremely hard time for a while, which was very entertaining. And he ended up holding on for a point in 10th place. It would have been nice to see them score a few more after the weekend they had up to them. But even so, it was a decent enough showing at, I guess, their home race. They have 3 now, so do we need to make them pick one to be their home race?
Yeah, maybe. Which would be... I think they're based in California, I think, Haas Engineering.
Oh, are they?
So that's probably Las Vegas, where you would put as their nearest race.
I'm going to look it up now. This is just going to be dead air while I do a quick Google.
Or maybe it's going to be somewhere complete. It's going to be in North Carolina or something.
It is North Carolina.
Is it?
Obviously, that was in the back of your head somewhere.
It must have been, yeah.
So I guess Miami is the closest. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, no, I guess Miami is the closest I've got to a home race. So there we go.
Yeah.
We'll give them that.
Be pretty close to that. Yeah.
Right.
And what about, Williams, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo also ran?
Yeah, I couldn't really think of much to put in the notes of interest from them, really. I mean, anything you want to add on any of the other teams?
Not massively, no. I think there were some interesting little battles further down the field, but yeah, nothing of any real consequence. So I think I'm happy to move on.
I mean, the most interesting thing from the teams we haven't talked about comes from driver of the day, and that's Yuki Tsunoda, who qualified not great. I think he was down 17th in what is arguably the slowest car on the grid. But again, just a battling drive from Tsunoda. He took 2 or 3 positions on the opening lap, I think. His race pace was really good. He finished 11th in the end, just outside the points, continuing his run of finishing 10th or 11th in every race this season. But another really good drive. Tsunoda's, unfortunately, he's in an absolute dog of a car, but I think Tsunoda's having a very good season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Tsunoda is he looks pretty comfortable in his situation at that team now. I wouldn't say he looks particularly comfortable in the car, because it's not a particularly nice car to drive, I'm sure. But
no one would be.
Yeah, but I think he does look. He seems to be maturing very nicely, doesn't he?
Yes,
He's aging like a fine wine.
Other driver of the day shouts?
I think obviously Verstappen.
Yeah.
You know,
Bit
yes,
of a masterclass.
He did have the data advantage, but definitely he had to really deliver the laps and deliver the lap times and do the business to get that win and to beat his teammate in the same car. So, yeah, I think Verstappen, even though he did get I think he got the one in the race, didn't he? He got the real.
I think he did, yeah.
I think Hamilton's worth a shout. Like Hamilton from 13th had to get it done on track, had to get some real overtakes done in a car that we know isn't the best, especially in the technical sort of tight twisties at this circuit, on this surface. So yeah, I think Hamilton had a good strategy and drove a good race. You've got Magnussen here as well.
Yeah, I mean, the car didn't have the race pace. He kind of went backwards from where he started, but I think it was still a really solid drive from him to hold on to get a point. I think he's worth a mention. Russell as well to come fourth in that car after the weekend they had was a solid one. Yeah.
And Alonso to just quietly run his race and have a sort of very solid performance. I guess solid performance doesn't necessarily get you driver of the day, but I think it's worth a mention because Alonso's still doing the business.
We're a bit spoiled for choice this week, aren't we?
Yeah. I think I'm very happy to give it to Verstappen. I think he nailed it. I think to start in 9th and then go all the way and get the win. I think that's not happened, according to David Croft, that's not happened that many times in Formula 1. I think it's the 4th time anyone's come from 9th to win or something ridiculous in Formula 1. It's just not a position where people seem to come back from to win.
I can go with that. I think what impressed me about it was a very, very measured drive. Like, there was pace and aggression there, but it was kind of, he let it be there when it needed to be. But he didn't just munch his tyres like over trying to get to the front. It was, I can give it to him. Not very rare we give it to the winner, but on this occasion, I think we can.
Yeah, I think so.
What about move of the day?
Verstappen passed Leclerc and Magnussen in one move.
That was good.
Absolutely almighty move.
So good. It was like, because he was gaining on them into the final, or I guess it's the penultimate corner. And he sort of just like held back. It's like, do you know what? I'll let you two do your thing for these last couple of corners. And then into turn 1, it's like, right, I've had enough of this.
It was high IQ overtake.
It was very good.
Very much bide your time, wait for them to slow each other down, and then just whoop, off you go.
I enjoyed Leclerc and Magnussen fighting, but that was more of like a multi-lap battle than a move in and of itself. So have you seen that video of Tsunoda on lap 1 as well? Wasn't on the broadcast, but Tsunoda went around the outside of Stroll and Zhou on the entry to that stupid little chicane that should be single file, and he just found his way around both of them. It was, I don't know, not really sure. It would very willing from the other two to kind of let him get away with doing it, but it's damn impressive all the same.
Yeah, wow. He's kind of lost the position as well, hasn't he? And then
I think one of the Alfa, because he passed.
It was an Alfa Romeo.
Yeah,
I think Bottas then.
I think Bottas kind of followed him through almost. Oh no, it wasn't. It was Zhou kind of came back at him. It was very good all the same.
But it's still good. That is good. That's good content.
However, I think it's a double Verstappen award. I think that move on Leclerc and Magnussen has to be.
I'm going double Ver.
And people say we're anti-Red Bull and anti-Verstappen. Look at us.
Not anti...
Just dishing out awards left, right and centre.
Totally fine. It's totally fine.
And then final award this week.
Honestly, what the are we doing here?
I mean...
I think will.i.am conducting an orchestra.
I was going to say, it's obviously something to do with the pre-race shenanigans. I was specifically going to say will.i.am because... he looked like a man who had never seen someone conducting before, but someone had described to him what a conductor looks like.
Yeah.
It's like, am I
They do
doing it
this with
right?
He's like been YouTubing
Is
people
this
conducting
normal?
orchestras, and then he's just showed up. Yeah,
It
that
was
was a bit
so
weird.
weird.
And I didn't even recognize it was him either. It couldn't even. His goggles were so huge that you couldn't tell. And he was wearing
could have been
race
anyone under there.
overalls as well. So it was kind of like,
Yeah.
what? Who
And have you
is
seen
this?
have you seen the video to like, because that music is actually like a song that he's written about Formula One, and there's like a video for it where he's just really badly green screened into some like CGI. It's really bad.
I haven't
Someone's
seen-
mentioned the Discord something I didn't actually see, but apparently like
Oh, I heard about this.
Jackie Stewart and one of Roger Federer's bodyguards like had a bit of a, like one of the bodyguards clearly didn't know who Jackie Stewart was and was like trying to stop him going through or something.
What, American bodyguard at a Formula One race not knowing who a really important figure
Weird,
in
huh?
Formula One is? That's never happened before, has it? I've got another one. They cut away from the action at one point to show a shot of an American actor, but captioned it at the bottom that it was Roger Federer,
Oh yeah.
when it clearly wasn't. It was the, I don't know the name of the American actor, but it was some American actor dude.
Like
Which-
if you're gonna cut away to
Yeah.
do that, at least get the person right.
At least get the right name. Yeah, at least get the right person. And the guy was just like thumbs up, smiling, kind of. Yeah, it was very strange. I think at the end as well, just like the amount of time it takes to get from the cool down room all the way back round to the podium in like. I mean, the fact that they have to give him a lift round there in the first
Yeah.
place is kind of ridiculous. This time in pretty cool like stretched mini mokes, which I
Yeah,
didn't
they were
mind.
actually quite cool.
They're quite kind of cool cars, better than the freaking motorcade that they had last year.
I did like as well this time that they put the paddock like inside the stadium, like on the pitch. Like that was actually pretty cool. That made a lot
that's
more
pretty
sense.
rad.
But-
But definitely though, like, you know what? At least there's no FIA WTFs this week. I
That
can
makes a
think
nice
of.
change, yeah. We'll give it to Will I Am
We've
instead.
not even mentioned the FIA. We've just mentioned Formula
didn't-
One being weird, which is
They
actually
didn't have
my
much
favourite
to
WTF.
do though, did they? It was a pretty clean race all in all. The only thing they did was give Sainz the most obvious penalty in the world for speeding in the pit lane. Like that was, I think, the only thing they had to do, and that's just the computer says, yeah, he's done a speed in the pit lane. Like, oh, okay, have a penalty. Like that was
He's
it.
done a speed in the pit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So well done, FIA. It's almost WTF that they haven't found. a
Yeah,
way
I
of
know,
shooting
they've not had
themselves
to
in the
mention
foot this
them.
week. I think overall, it just has to. I mean, I know. Look, I don't want to like do down them trying to have a bit of fun at the start of a race, but I think if you're gonna do it, then you need to kind of like have everyone on board and make sure it's not like cringe and forced, and it needs to be like a better thought through plan if you're going to do these kind of like big show-stoppy displays at the start of each race. So and as well, like you can't just pick and choose like and just only do this at the American ones. If you're going to like and then just say, oh well, it's what Americans do in sport. It turns out like Formula One's not necessarily a strictly American sport. It's kind of a global sport. I don't know if you realize.
Yeah, as much as they seem to be trying to pretend otherwise sometimes.
Yeah, so I'm kind of like, let Formula One have its own identity and come up with its own things that it does. Don't try to be like all the other sort of overblown sporting events that things like that suit. You know, like stuff
Yeah.
like this doesn't necessarily suit Formula One, so therefore maybe don't try and shoehorn it into it and make it into something that is
And it-
forced fed to us again.
It is weird because, like, clearly, as soon as they described what they were going to do, clearly everyone was like, that just sounds awful and cringy. And it was every bit as awful as we expected it to be. And I don't feel like I've seen a lot of Americans being like, that was great, loved that,
Dude,
really
like-
glad they pandered to us. Like,
Even the crowd, even like
just like bemused.
LL Cool J was there like make some noise, and it was followed by like stunned silence from the crowd. So
Yeah.
that tells you, I think that tells you everything that you need to know about the success of the driver interest. And plus, they've done it before. They did it. It's not like this is a new idea.
No,
they
exactly.
Did it at the Circuit of the Americas when they first went there. And you know what? Actually, the execution that time was really, really good. I thought
It actually was a lot better there,
than
yeah.
this. Like the drivers seemed a lot more into it. It seemed planned. It seemed like there was some actual fanfare. This felt a lot more cobbled together to me, and I would say as a result of that it was less successful.
The other thing as well is like, surely one of the appeals of F1 going to the States is like, this is a global sport that is coming to your country. Like, if IndyCar decided to do a round in the UK, you wouldn't expect IndyCar to turn up and start being British. Like,
yeah. You'd
like,
expect them to turn up and start and carry on being IndyCar, because
come here and
you're there.
be yourselves. That's what we want to see. So
exactly that.
Yeah, strange, very strange choices. But there we go. Should we have a quick talk about predictions?
Let's.
As is becoming a theme this season, me, you, and Tom have all scored a point each.
That's
We're having
fine.
a very
I'm okay with that.
consistently below average season.
This is fine.
But more interestingly, our top scorer this week is Paige Henderson, who got 4 out of 5. Paige was the only person to go for 20 finishes and no DNFs. The only thing they got wrong was fastest in Q3. Went for Verstappen, understandably. But 4 out of 5 for that race is a heck of a score. It's very impressive.
Thanks, Charles. You've saved us a few bob there.
In the overall leaderboard, Jeremy Simkin tops the league on 11 points, but then there are 6 people tied for second, 1 point behind, including friend of the show, Ashley Foster. And then there's another 16 people, another point behind them. So it's ridiculously close to the top. So
wow, it is tight.
Make sure you're not missing any week's predictions. It's all super open still. And then over in Grid Rival, Festa F1 is the top scorer this week with 1,006 points, which actually takes them into the overall lead on Grid Rival, just 40 points ahead of previous leader Effortlessly. So all very close over there as well. Which all takes us nicely to...
Keep it saying now. But stay out. Box. Hey, man.
I do enjoy it. I do enjoy that sound clip. Anyway, first one, I rep MK14 or Mark 14, whichever way you want it. This is a YouTube comment, our first YouTube comment. They are speaking about sprint races. They say, how about we do sprint and actual quali on Friday? They have a lot of data on their cars and the track already. Don't put them in Parc Fermé and let them make changes ready for the sprint. Then put them in Parc Fermé after the sprint race, so they go into the race with more setup time, but it's taken from competitive running and the grids will be more mixed up. What do you think? So he's saying do the 2 qualies back to back,
all the qualifying,
then do the sprint, then do the race. Yeah. I think that's probably. I think giving them the option after the sprint race to make changes to the car is probably sensible. I don't think it's necessarily great that they're locked into what could be that they discover a very poor performing car at that point. So
yeah. It's tricky because the interest that the reason Parc Fermé adds interest is that it means setup is a balance, right? Anyone can turn up to qualifying, set a car up to be fast over one lap, and then turn the next day and set up the car completely differently to be fast for a race. But the fact that you have to have a setup that can do both jobs is a kind of an interesting compromise that the teams have to do. So where you insert that point during a sprint weekend is tricky. I don't hate the idea of just doing all the qualifying on the Friday and getting that done. You'd probably want to do Grand Prix qualifying first, just in case somebody bins it and then misses out on sprint qualifying, which would be better than binning it in sprint qualifying and missing out on Grand Prix qualifying. I mean, I suppose the response to that is don't crash, but...
Yeah. But I think, I think really overall, I don't think the issue with sprint race weekends is necessarily the order that quali comes in. I think there's bigger problems with it.
There are bigger problems to fix, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's probably about as much time as we can get that one. Should we do the next one?
Yeah, next one from Randy Mandy. Hey man, cart before the horse I know, but where will this season rank in terms of Alonso's achievements historically, and how about for him personally?
Oh, wow.
It's a good question.
It's probably already pretty up there, right?
It is, like, the fact that he's proving that he does very much still have the goods is impressive in itself. I still personally think the most impressive thing Alonso has done is not in F1. I think his first Le Mans victory, where he got in the car having never driven at night before, or maybe done like a handful of practice laps, and he went out to do a night stint and was just the fastest man on track by like a margin, and just like pumped in this monster stint in the dark, was wildly impressive. Like, I'd only maybe done 2 or 3 races in that car before that point as well.
That is wild. That's really, really wild that he could
There
do
are a
that.
lot of high points in his career. There's a lot of low points in his career, but a lot of highs as well.
Yeah.
think
And
that
he's, one of the,
first-
he's like a walking, talking meme generator. As
He
well.
really is, yeah. He's very much embraced this like new version of himself, which I've got a lot of time for.
Yeah, in answer to the question, like specifically about this season, I think pretty highly. I think let's see where they end up at the end of the season, obviously, but so far so good, right? Like they're the
Yeah.
second best car, the second fastest, they're second in the championship, the third in the drivers' championship, I believe. Yeah, they are. Yeah, so best of the rest so far. In a car that wasn't necessarily the best of the rest in any of its previous years by a long
not
way.
for a long
So,
time.
yeah, it's good to see. Next one, Darth Kilowog says, "Hola, hermanos." Isn't that "Hello, brothers" in Spanish? I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is. I'll take it.
Given his struggles, do you think Nick? Oh, here we go again. Nick De Vries. Do you think Nick De Vries finishes the season at AlphaTauri? When he does eventually lose a seat, who do you think might replace him? And then there's a link to the.
I'll drop that in there for our benefit.
Or was that you dropped that in? I thought he'd given us that.
I mean, I said last week that I don't think he'll get replaced, but I do think he won't get replaced mid-season. I do think he'll struggle to see a second season. I mean, it's a long way to go. Maybe he'll turn things around.
Yeah. I think if you want to know what I think about that, go back and listen to last week's episode.
Yeah,
But
we
I
talked about it a
think,
bit then.
If we're replacing him, then probably Dennis Hauger.
Dennis
I would
Hauger and
say.
Liam Lawson are probably the most likely candidates, aren't they?
Yeah, I think even of those two, I still think Dennis Hauger is more likely to get that seat. I think he just seems like the Red Bull package, I guess. Like it's just about the right time for him to be making a move up into a Formula One team as well, maybe this season or next season. So yeah, I would of the pick of all of the Red Bull junior drivers, I would say him.
Liam Lawson's in that dreaded, we've got nowhere else for you right now, so we'll send you off to do Super Formula point of his career. And not every driver comes back from that as a young driver. Next question from...
Sorry, just... Well,
No, go ahead.
Did Liam Lawson do anything in F2, or did he...
Liam Lawson, yeah, he didn't win any titles, but he came... Let me find it. He's done 2 seasons. He was 9th in his first season and 3rd in his second. So,
I would say not quite enough compared to
No.
Dennis Hauger, who's won the F3 championship.
He was 3rd to Felipe Drogovic, who we know is now Aston Martin reserve, and Teo Porcher, who I think he's currently leading F2 and he's going to be in F1 within the next few years for sure. Right, next one.
Yeah.
From Benson. Hey man, do you think the lack of overtaking this season compared to last is something that can be remedied this season? Or will we have to wait for another technical regulation change to undo some of the damage the FIA seem to have done with how easy it is to follow this season? It's weird because we've just said this race had 60 overtakes. So
I think we'll know better at the end of the season, right? Like, or at least we need to get probably halfway through the season before we can start saying for certain whether or not these regulations have had such a detrimental effect on overtaking. I think the circuits that we've been to so far, I know what you feel. I feel like, Chris, you feel like there is a lot less overtaking, but I just think, and I only say that because it was your stat that we used before to point this out as a piece of news. So, correct me there if I'm backing up the wrong tree. But I think later in the season we'll have a better idea. Let's just get to some proper racetracks and get more way through the season, because all of these early races have had something about them that has somehow made them into a weird outlier, if you know what I mean. There's been some condition or something happened to make each race a little bit strange, and probably Miami is the closest we've come to just a regular old Formula One race,
and it wasn't that at all.
And it wasn't that, yeah, exactly. So I think the next one maybe. I mean, we're overdue a regular old Formula One race, and I can't wait for it.
I mean, yeah, Imola does have a habit of producing pretty garden variety regular Grand Prix, so.
It's the sparrow of Formula One. The next one is from Charlotte. I've got loads this week. Next one's from Charlotte Taylor. She says, I really enjoyed the race and was surprised to see so many people online saying it was boring. Why did a race with lots of overtaking and different strategies not come across as exciting as it should have done? That's an interesting question.
It is, and it's one I've been mulling over, having seen how much people did seem to enjoy it, and I can't quite work out why it didn't necessarily work for me. I think I'm pretty bored of one-stop strategy races where the choices are, do you do the softer tyre then the hard one, or the hard? If not even that, it's do you do the medium then the hard, or the hard then the medium? Because the soft tyres rarely get a look in. I think something around tyre usage maybe needs a tweak, or like tyre life and stuff. But yeah, do you know what? If the majority of people enjoyed that race, I'm happy to be in the minority.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. Like, I thought it was better than last week's race. Definitely more seemed to happen. There was more. It was a more tense race, I think, than last week, and also just there did seem to be a lot more action. It wasn't perfect, I don't think, and I think maybe the broadcast could have done a little bit more to show some of the action going on throughout the race. I think that is a big part of the problem here, but I still think like it did have the sense of tension to it and poise to it that I do enjoy in Formula One racing, and I do enjoy watching the lap times tick down and comparing the two competing drivers. It was to me it was just as entertaining watching those laps being posted every lap and seeing who was going quicker at what point, and trying to work out when the overtake was going to happen, than it was actually seeing the racing on track, which is maybe why I felt like maybe that's why I missed half the action on track, was because I was looking at lap times the whole race. But I like those kind of races. That is my sort of style of following those kind of races, and that's what entertains me. So yeah, tell me I'm wrong in the comments.
I mean, that's fair. Final question this week from Rat. Hey guys, has the cost cap hamstrung the progression of top teams towards the best possible car, or are we just seeing a repeat of 2014 to 2016? That obviously referencing the Mercedes dominance years.
Yeah. I think if the top teams had all the money in the world to spend, it wouldn't be any different, because they'd all have they would all equally have all of the money in the world to spend, so the gap wouldn't change.
Yeah. The gap between the top teams wouldn't change. The gap between the top teams and the rest would get a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So, yeah.
So we're solving a different problem here to what this question describes, I think.
I think potentially the cost cap is making it harder for teams that start the season badly to close the gap and catch up.
Yeah.
But again, we're only in the second season of the cost cap. Last season, in many ways, was a bit of a sort of dress rehearsal for it. So it's going to take a few years to properly see the effect it will have. Like, I still believe that the Red Bull's limited CFD and wind tunnel time is going to affect them more next year than it is this year. So we're still kind of seeing exactly how it's playing out.
Yeah, it's a barge, not a speedboat. It's going to take time for all of this stuff to sort of show itself and to be steered onto the correct course.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And that is about all we've got this week. So no F1 for a couple of weeks. We'll be back next week to preview Imola, which I assume is called the Emilia-Romagna, and then like 20 other words Grand Prix again, because they like to have the longest names in the business.
Yeah.
There is, though, if you want a racing fix, Extreme E is back this weekend. It's the Hydro XP in Scotland. I believe it's called the Hydro XP because it is happening by a hydroelectric power plant and some wind turbines, I guess. But that's a double header, takes place on Saturday and Sunday, so that's normally a good watch. There was also Formula E in Monaco at the weekend. If you missed that, it's well worth watching the... In fact, I'd say to rewatch the whole race, not even the highlights. It was a very entertaining race. And there's also IndyCar this weekend. They're at Indianapolis to do the Grand Prix road course. And then right after that, they start on the Indy 500 practice. So
That's such a fun track, you know.
it's super cool, yeah.
It's a great track, the road car course. Definitely check that out. And if you got Gran Turismo going, if you haven't already, you probably learned that track already by now. But if you haven't, go and do it. It's really good.
Go do some laps. But yeah, that is all for now. You can obviously contact us in all the usual places: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
YouTube.
Yes, reminder that the show is now on YouTube. If you want to see our faces, we've had lots of people write in to say none of us look what they expect us to look like, which is par for the course with podcasts. Also, a lot of people saying they're still finding it hard to like tell our voices apart, which surprises me because I feel like we all sound very different. But again, we all hear each other all the time, so that's a fun new thing we're learning about.
That is a fun one.
But yeah, give that a watch.
Yeah, watch it from the start and see us introduce ourselves, and you'll know what if it's put a name to the voice.
Also on Instagram, we've been sticking little clips of the shows as well in little bite-sized forms if you want to have a look at that as well. If that's your kind of thing. But I think that's all the stuff we need to mention. So, as I say, we'll be back next week to preview Imola. But until then, thanks everyone for listening and goodbye.
Bye.